Welcome, welcome, hardcore people that showed up. I'm Susan Platt. I'm going to introduce Henry C. Matthews. He was a professor of architectural history for many years at Washington State University, has also taught at the University of Washington. And as is the case for many people these days, he could talk about almost anything to do with architecture. But he has also published a book on Kirtland Cutter, who designed the, what's that place called?
Stimson Green.
Stimson Green around the corner, and also the Rainier Club. So that's one. He started with that, and now he's been wandering the coast of Turkey and published 3 books, 3, and 1 on Sicily. So he's quite willing to take on many subjects. So today he will be talking about Mesopotamia, which is one of my most favorite words, the world's first cities. Henry, you're on.
Good to see you here, and I will enjoy leading you through Mesopotamia as well as I can. Mesopotamia literally means between the rivers, the Euphrates and the Tigris, and the oldest cities in the world are down here at the southern end, and then later they were invaded by the Akkadians from further north. They revived again, and then we move on, but I have given very little time to Assyria and Babylon. So the first city that we will talk about is Eridu, which is the first city in the world, the oldest city in the world, founded about 5,000 BCE. Astonishing. Oh. So the great rivers, the Tigris and Euphrates, brought fertility to the land by depositing vast quantities of alluvial soil upon it. The invention of the plough and the development of irrigation systems enabled the Sumerian people to produce an agricultural surplus, and that made it possible for them to live in cities. If all you can do is go out into the fields and try to raise enough food for you to eat that day, not much city life can take place. But the Sumerian cities were astonishing in what they achieved over the millennia. Writing and art developed there. No one ever wrote before the Sumerians, and art allowed them to live a civilized life in cities. They could represent all kinds of ideas. The Sumerians probably had migrated into this area from the mountains to the east, and there they sensed the presence of God in the mountains. So when they built their cities in the fertile land where they settled, they built temples for their gods raised up on high places, and we will see some of them. The ziggurat, a stepped pyramid, is the base of a temple built as a residence for a god. They wished to honor their gods by building them residences. The oldest city in the world is Eridu, and the city of Ur, we'll visit that. The Ziggurat of Ur is famous. Then later the Akkadians invaded and took over the Sumerian era. But gradually the Sumerian people prevailed and returned. So there's a Neo-Sumerian period. Then we come to Babylon and points further north. It was here that the first writing was developed. No paper was invented for centuries, but they wrote by pressing styluses into soft clay and developed a system of writing that was not only used for administration, but for the first time, poetry, stories, letters, expressions of love and fear, etc. To the south are marshes near the Persian Gulf, and there, until the marshes were drained by Saddam Hussein recently, people fished and navigated just as they had done thousands of years ago. There you see marsh Arabs in the 20th century, just like those who existed 5,000 years ago. And among the marshes, they built houses out of bundles of reeds, which they also made into mats and open meshes where they wanted light to enter. So this was an extraordinary architecture, but what we will see now is built of mud bricks. There was no stone, so they used mud bricks. The Sumerians invented all kinds of things that are essential to us, like time. Who thought of dividing a day into 24 hours and hours into 60 minutes? I presume they did seconds too. This was an incredible stroke of genius. They harnessed the wind. They developed numbers and the first geometry, the domestication of animals, and advances in medical treatment. But above all, they invented the city. The Sumerians worshipped many gods. Among them were Enki, the god of water, fertility, knowledge, intelligence, and crafts. Inanna, the god of love, war, fertility, who later became the queen of heaven. Ealil, the god of wind and storms, and Ninhursag, the goddess of fertility and the earth. The first of the cities we will look at is the city of Eridu, towards the southern end of Mesopotamia. The rather faded picture above shows the hill on which the temple was built, but beneath it the city was built in many layers, layer upon layer. Every few generations they would cover up, they would reduce the walls to lower walls, build a new level floor, and start constructing a new city. There was something like 14 cities, one upon the other. A staircase led up to a group of temples, one of which is known as the White Temple. This was built with walls of mud brick. You can see that, I don't know, I've forgotten how to do it. Oh yes, mud brick. Here the walls were thickened with something like buttresses. You can see up here, they give the effect of light and shade. There was a central space with other rooms off it, probably for rituals of one kind or another. We don't know much about it. Another temple on the mound at the city of Tepe Gowra, founded in about 3800 BCE, was built with mud brick walls reinforced with buttresses, creating effects of light and shade. This one has a courtyard where this is it. Courtyard where the people could gather, and then there are different temples and a smaller shrine here. If we look at the plan of this major temple, we will see that there are buttresses thickening the walls. So obviously beams crossed the spaces between these buttresses. And in some of the temples, the walls were decorated in an amazing way. It's not very exciting to have walls of pure mud, so they would build ceramic cones and press them into the mud while it was still wet and create extraordinary patterns of ceramic material on the surface. Another temple of a different type is known as the Oval Temple at Kafaje, 2600 BCE, raised on a high platform. It's surrounded by the houses of the city. The public would enter into a courtyard and then climb up into an upper courtyard surrounded by storerooms. It seems that food was stored here against periods of famine, so the public could have something to eat. And I read somewhere that this was described as a socialist theocracy. I like that. After a while, after a couple of millennia, the Sumerian cities were invaded by the Akkadians who lived to the north. And here is a bronze head of Sargon the First, the king of Akkadia. You can see that he's a warrior type. And this must be I'm not sure where the first bronze heads ever appeared, but this is extraordinarily sophisticated. So you can see that by this time they developed all kinds of skills, such as casting bronze. But the cruel Akkadian Empire gave way to a Neo-Sumerian era, and this is characterized by this delightful, humble-looking king sitting on a throne with a map on his lap, or a plan of a temple on his map. This is King King Gudea. So on his lap in this picture, you see the plan of a temple. You may be able to just make out those buttresses projecting from the wall, and then below on his skirt is writing. So this king is a purveyor of ideas and writing. The most famous of the temples built in the region was known as the Ziggurat of Ur. I love that word, ziggurat. It somehow conveys the idea of the steps of the pyramid rising up to a temple on top. To the right, you see a plan showing a palace down below and the city surrounded by walls, and then in one corner the immensely high ziggurat approached by 3 staircases. I wish we could see people at a festival climbing up the staircases, convening at the central gateway and then spreading around the terraces. Perhaps only the elite could go to the upper terrace, but there was the temple, so probably all the people would pass through it. This was restored. It was quite ruined at one time, but has been restored so that the public can climb it. Here it is with American soldiers who had a headquarters at the city of Ur. Oh yeah, here are American soldiers parading on the steps leading up to the ziggurat. And school children, after it was restored to the people, after the Americans had relinquished it, school children visiting the Ziggurat of Ur. In a cemetery at Ur, tombs were found with figures reclining on the ground beside musical instruments. These instruments were stringed instruments. I don't have a picture of one, unfortunately, with these images on the sides. This is called the Standard of Ur. It shows the people arriving in carts and with horses and carrying precious gifts to be left at the temple. So here, this is the decoration of a musical instrument. I wish I could have someone pluck a few strings and play it for us. Returning to the map, we have looked at Eridu and Ur, Lagash. Oh, we haven't got to Lagash yet. And then we will go to Babylon, to the Assyrians in this region, and to Babylon. The Assyrians were powerful military people. Here we can see them racing across the countryside on horses and pulling chariots, and here we see the king Ashurbanipal hunting lions. He obviously liked to be represented holding his bow and attacking a lion which is leaping through the air at him. No doubt he survived. The Assyrians built a great citadel and palace at Khorsabad. You can see that there is a small ziggurat there, but this is an enormous walled city with buildings around courtyards and a palace with this amazing entry between one space and another, with these great figures flanking the entrance, half bull, half human. Oh yes, we haven't got to it yet. There it is, and that is in the British Museum. I took a look at this a few months ago and felt suitably humbled. And then, this is rather hard to make out, but these are illustrations of people rowing through water, and they seem to be moving heavy logs through the water as if they're about to use them for building one of their cities. Further north, this map shows the Assyrian Empire. The Persian Gulf is down here. Here are the cities of Sumer. Oh, here are the cities of Sumer, and then we go up to Babylon. And in Babylon is one of the most amazing symbols of the beginnings or the development of civilization. This is the Code of Hammurabi. Hammurabi had this written about criminal law, civil law, family law, and it contains such well-known ideas as an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. And that's BC. With all of this is far BC. I haven't been focusing on the dates, but this is about 1792 BC. And then here are the walls of Babylon in the time of King Nebuchadnezzar. Yes, here are the walls of Babylon, a great city. King Nebuchadnezzar is famous for his suppression of the Jews. And this is the Ishtar Gate, which now has been reproduced with the original incredible blue tiles in the Pergamon Museum in Berlin. Well, I seem to have gone very fast through this, and I've probably left out things that I intended to to say. Well, perhaps you have some questions.
Well, I have a question. If you go back to the earlier material with the, yeah, that one. Can you move the pointer off the, yeah, there we go. This is made of stone, right, Henry?
Yes.
And I think it's very important information that you didn't go over, that he stands on a mountaintop, etc. I wonder if you could just read through some of those things.
Yeah, Hammurabi stands on a mountaintop before Shamash, the sun god, and the god of justice. Before them, below them, are inscribed the people's rights, duties, and punishments for wrongdoings. And here's a quote: "To cause justice to prevail in the land, that the strong might not oppress the weak, nor the weak the strong." What language? Yes.
How much is in the British Museum, and how do you know how it got there?
This, I believe, is in the Louvre. No. Yeah, these are in the British Museum. King Ashurbanipal hunting. That you go through. Oh, no. Yeah, you go through this entryway and down a long passage, and the walls of the passage are covered with these low reliefs. Very, very vigorous. How they put motion and energy into these images is absolutely extraordinary. We had Sargon of the who invaded the cities of Ur and the cities of Mesopotamia. But this is a later king, Sargon. It was obviously a good name to use because he was so impressive. Yes?
I'd be interested, how are these created? Were people, do you have any idea? I mean, they're so amazing. And they look to have one artistic hand to me. And so I'm wondering, were there crews of people who were assigned the role of creating these? Or how many people would it take
I wish that we knew.
to create that?
But these are on huge slabs of stone.
Can you give us how big? How big are these?
About half the height of the wall behind me, I think. Yes. And they're carved out of slabs of stone in low relief with immense skill. How these artists managed to convey the idea of motion is extraordinary. Those horses are flying through the air.
There's a lot of amazing detail here, and I think that we worship the Parthenon and the Elgin marbles, but these are actually more extraordinary in some ways in terms of the detail and the use of very low relief, actually, isn't it? Just
Yes.
not that deep. Look at that one on the bottom there with the lion. Oh, okay. Yay, questions. Hi.
You mentioned the importance of fertility in the development of Mesopotamia, which surely is the case. But there are other fertile places in the world also which did not develop a civilization that you've shown us. Do you have any thoughts about where civilization came from?
That's a very good question. Well, while I was writing a few notes, for example, the fact that we were looking at the first city in the world, I thought, well, wait a minute, what about China? Someone in the audience is going to tell me that China was way earlier, but it was much later, actually. The cities of Mesopotamia in the 5th millennium BC. Oh, I wish we could see the people tilling the fields and bringing their goods to market, and then some people becoming, or developing all kinds of other professions and developing urban life. We have, it was all made of mud, so it's disappeared, only leaving a few remains. Thank you for asking that question.
This is the end of that era. And way back. Question? Hey.
Okay. Henry, what was on the Hammurabi's code and these other what was the language? Was this in cuneiform?
That is a very good question, and I think you've caught me out. I'm not very good at reading those languages. Maybe somebody else knows.
We have someone that knows this.
Henry, you mentioned the Code of Hammurabi. Could you say some more about that, the significance of it?
I wish I could.
Go back to the code.
Yes. It's the other way. Here it is.
One before that where you listed it?
He inscribed the people's rights and duties. It involved criminal law, including assault, theft, and so on, and civil law, which had to do with slavery, debt, and all kinds of issues. They were very sophisticated in their law. Then family law as well.
Is this one of the earliest examples of codified civil law?
I believe it was virtually the first.
Following along that line, do you have any information on a bio on Hammurabi himself?
I wish I did.
It would be interesting to know, how his thinking developed. Just, a little bit, about how these ideas developed.
Yeah, they do seem to jump off with very long.
Well, I think the ideas developed slowly through the civilization, and we do have some written records.
Hammurabi is credited with being the initial author of a written code because it is so extensive. There were rules, but narrow. And the Code of Hammurabi reaches in a very democratic way, although it may not have been thought of in democratic terms. But the Hammurabi Code influences the development of law and ultimately Roman law and Anglo-American law. So it is very foundational to Western sense of legal justice.
Thank you very much.
More hands? I saw some over here, didn't I? Didn't you have a question before? No? Here's Bill. Let me make sure it's turned on.
The people in this area we're talking about, the Assyrians, Sumerians, Akkadians, were, as I remember, non-Semitic tribes that had migrated down from the north. At what point did the Semitic tribes, the Arabs, migrate up into this area? Do you know?
That's a very good question, and once again you catch me out. I think we have a lot of knowledge in the audience here, so if anyone else has anything to share, I would appreciate it. Yes, at the back. Susan at the back.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you. I regret that we came in a little bit late, and I don't recall, and maybe I never knew, what was the duration of the civilization from Mesopotamia? And do we know anything that was pre-Mesopotamian in that area?
I think just subsistence farming came before it, and the slow development of cities. The city of Uruk was probably founded in the 5th millennium BCE and developed stage by stage very slowly. Of course, writing tends to give us, if we can decipher it, the inventories of warehouses and the costs of things and so on, but doesn't really tell us what people were thinking. There were no great urbanists like those of the modern age with their theories about how cities should work.
I think it's amazing that they developed the ability to even keep track of their goods. That's numbers, that's adding together, that's a lot of different skills that we take for granted, but were rather unusual. You can't hear me? But the mic is on. Oh, I'm sorry. I was just saying I thought it demonstrated very advanced thinking to even keep an inventory of everything in terms of adding things up.
Yes. So this, the White Temple at Uruk was started about 3500 BCE, very, very long time ago.
Were all these excavations done in the 19th and early 20th century?
This area was almost unknown 150 years ago. It's extraordinary. But look at that landscape. How would you know that anything was there when the last of the mud brick walls of the temples had been covered by layers of blown sand and mud? So the first archaeologists, I should have found out more about the individual archaeologists and what they discovered. As you can see, this is not a great area of my expertise, but
Question.
Is the mound at the top of the picture human-made or is it natural history?
well, since we know that there were layers near ground level. Since there were layers near ground level, this is sort of diagrammatic. These ones are on top of these ones. It must have been gradually piled up over centuries. So people must have carried great baskets on their heads full of soil, getting higher and higher and pouring it out over previous ruins and building level floors. How they managed to persist doing this for century after century is...
Very top picture, very top. The very top pointy one up there.
Up here?
No, the other, yeah, up there, yeah. It looks like it's a staircase going up the side, but anyway.
This picture's not very clear.
I think it's very interesting that these places haven't been taken any further, though. Maybe it's, recently, of course, it's Iraq, where we've been messing around with everything and destroying culture. But why aren't there more books and more color photographs of these places? It's interesting.
I agree. I longed for color photographs of beautiful landscapes with powerful temples.
Is this during or after World War II?
Yeah. Well, this is the first of a series of 6 lectures. The next one will be Egypt, about which I have a great deal to say. I probably should have had 2 or 3 of Egypt, but we'll move through the centuries. I will particularly focus on the very earliest architecture of Egypt, the huge city of King Zoser, who built the first stone building with cut stone, the first columns fluted like Greek columns, the first pyramid, and a great deal more. And I think I look forward to introducing Egypt, and then we will move on through history for 6 sessions. Tigris.
This was the land between 2 rivers, the Euphrates and the Tigris.
There it is. Now, what's happening there today? Is this part of Iraq? Is it all Iraq? We heard a lot about Mosul.
There's Baghdad. Most of this is Iraq.
I think there's been a lot of destruction on these archaeological sites. I believe. Look how close they are to Baghdad, all these places. And then, of course, other areas of the Middle East, a lot of destruction. You're not going to be talking about where Syria is, are you?
No.
Yeah, it's really sad. Up.
Well, thank you for coming.
Thank you very
and
much.
See you again.
Thank you.
From now on, these lectures will be
Thank
on
you.
Thursday.